Now, today, you are going to consume something like 34 gigabytes of information.
Which is, frankly, a staggering amount of data to even try to visualize.
It really is. I mean, by the time your head hits the pillow tonight, you will have processed the data equivalent of reading 174 full-length newspapers.
And then you wake up tomorrow and, well, you just do it all over again.
Exactly. But you have to ask yourself this, right? How much of that information are you actually going to remember by next week?
If we're being totally honest, almost none of it.
Yeah, zero. You might have this, brilliant insight during your morning commute, or maybe you read an absolutely paradigm-shifting book on your lunch break.
Right, and you just assume your mind's going to securely file that away for later.
We totally do. We have this quiet expectation that our memory just operates like a steel trap.
Which is a profound misunderstanding of human biology, honestly.
Oh, totally.
We are essentially attempting to process a 21st century deluge of data using the exact same Paleolithic brains we had 200,000 years ago.
Back on the plains of East Africa, right?
Exactly. I mean, our brains did not evolve to store limitless gigabytes of text and video and audio.
No, they evolved to scan the horizon for predators, right?
Yeah.
To navigate physical spaces.
Right, and to manage really complex social dynamics within a small tribe. So the problem isn't that your memory is somehow failing you.
Right. You're not broken.
No, not at all. The problem is just the sheer physics of the information stream we are constantly subjecting ourselves to.
Yeah, the mismatch is just staggering. And when you look at the data for today's deep dive, the consequences of this biological mismatch are so visible.
Oh, absolutely.
We aren't becoming super geniuses with all this access to human knowledge. We are actually suffering from a condition that researchers are calling information exhaustion.
Yeah, it is actively taxing our cognitive load to the point of structural fatigue.
And there is this terrifying statistic in the material that I want to share with you. The average knowledge worker spends up to 76 hours a year simply looking for misplaced notes, documents, or files.
Just think about the psychological weight of that for a second.
It's awful.
You are spending nearly 2 entire work weeks every single year hunting down things you already know you possess.
It is basically the definition of modern cognitive overload. You are burning all this executive function just trying to locate the starting line.
Right. And that immense frustration is exactly what we are tackling in today's deep dive.
Yes, we are exploring the core concepts laid out in Tiago Forte's Building a Second Brain. And the mission here is, well, it's to completely transform your relationship with the technology surrounding you.
Because right now, most of us use our laptops and our smartphones as either, distraction engines or just passive storage drives where ideas basically go to die.
Right. So we were going to examine how to shift that paradigm. We're going to look at how to build an external system, a digital second brain, that actually captures, organizes, and refines knowledge automatically.
With the ultimate goal being to liberate your biological brain from the grueling task of rote memorization.
Yeah, so it can return to what it was actually evolved to do, which is to imagine and synthesize and create.
But to truly grasp the urgency of externalizing our knowledge like this, we have to look at the crucible in which this specific system was forged.
Oh, the origin story is wild.
It really is. It didn't start out as some clever productivity hack for Silicon Valley executives. It was actually born out of a severe medical crisis.
Yeah, when the author was a junior in college, he developed this agonizing, unexplained condition in the back of his throat.
And it degraded to the point where just the basic mechanics of human existence, speaking, swallowing, even laughing, caused him blinding pain.
He went to specialist after specialist, and no one could identify the root cause.
Right. So, desperate to manage the nerve pain, doctors prescribed him a heavy regimen of anti-seizure medication.
Which dulled the pain, but the neurological side effects were just catastrophic.
Yeah, at 24 years old, in what should have been the cognitive prime of his life, he developed severe short-term memory loss.
He essentially had the memory capacity of an 80-year-old. He would read entire books or go on trips, have these deep conversations with friends, and days later, the experiences were wiped entirely from his hard drive.
It forces a really terrifying existential question, I think. Who are you when your primary brain becomes a compromised environment?
Wow, yeah. Your identity is basically just a collection of memories.
Exactly. So when that biological hardware begins to fail, you reach an absolute breaking point. He realized that relying on a fragmented medical system where every specialist only looked at one tiny piece of his biology was a dead end.
He had to take absolute responsibility for his own survival, so he demanded his complete patient record.
Not just the summaries either, the entire raw file.
Right, the clinic handed him hundreds of pages of physical documents. He took that massive stack back to his family's computer and began digitizing every single page.
And remember, this was the early 2000s, so this was not some seamless cloud sync.
No, it was manual, grueling transcription.
He made the document searchable. He started logging every variable of his daily existence.
Like every symptom flare-up, the exact dosage of every medication, what he ate when he slept.
And this is where the power of the external system really reveals itself, because he removed the data from his failing biological memory and placed it into a digital environment where he could actually manipulate it.
And suddenly, patterns emerged that a dozen highly trained doctors had completely missed.
Right. He discovered he wasn't suffering from an infection or a tumor. He had what is called a functional voice disorder.
Meaning the tension in his nervous system was manifesting physically in his vocal cords?
Exactly. And by tracking the data, he proved that specific changes in his diet, targeted meditation, and physical vocal exercises could actually manage the condition.
His digitized notes literally saved his life. But the really fascinating part to me is that once the immediate medical crisis was managed, he didn't just abandon the system.
No, he realized he had accidentally built a cognitive exoskeleton.
Yeah, he took this same digital infrastructure back to his university coursework. He went from being this struggling, heavily medicated student to graduating with honors.
And then he takes the system into the Peace Corps. He moves to rural Ukraine to teach English.
Where he has almost no reliable internet.
Right, so he is managing scattered teaching resources across dozens of disparate USB drives, random physical textbooks, and handwritten lesson plans.
But the second brain architecture actually scaled perfectly to handle all that chaos.
It did. And the ultimate stress test came afterward when he transitioned from rural Ukraine to a job as an analyst at a top-tier consulting firm in Silicon Valley.
Oh man, talk about walking straight into the epicenter of the modern information deluge.
Hundreds of emails a day, constant Slack pings, endless client demands. But while his peers are basically drowning in the cognitive overload, he thrived.
Why? Because he didn't try to hold any of it in his head. Every client feedback call, every research paper, every internal memo was immediately offloaded into his digital system.
Now, it sounds incredibly modern, right? This whole idea of a digital cognitive exoskeleton.
It does, but looking through the source material, this is actually just the digital evolution of a very old, very analog tradition.
Exactly. We are essentially talking about the commonplace book.
Yes, the commonplace book. During previous inflection points in human history where information suddenly exploded, like the Renaissance or the Industrial Revolution.
Right. The educated classes face their own version of information exhaustion. To cope, figures like Leonardo da Vinci, John Locke, Virginia Woolf, they all carry these physical journals known as commonplace books.
But they didn't use them like modern diaries, right? Not to record their feelings or what they had for lunch.
No, they use them strictly as knowledge repositories. They would transcribe a compelling quote from a philosophical text and then sketch a mechanical design on the next page.
And maybe jot down an observation about astronomy right beneath that.
Right, and by forcing these really disparate pieces of information to live next to each other on the same page, they sparked new synthetic ideas.
Okay, I definitely understand the historical romance of Da Vinci sketching flying machines. But I really have to interject here
Go for it.
because I think most people listening, myself definitely included, have a deeply ingrained, almost toxic aversion to the very concept of taking notes.
I completely agree, and we know exactly where that comes from.
It stems directly from our industrialized education system. Like, in school, notes are not tools for discovery. They are basically disposable test prep.
Right, you endure a lecture, you furiously scribble down exactly what the teacher says.
You cram it into your short-term memory, you regurgitate it onto a Scantron sheet, and then you mentally format the drive. The notes are literally garbage after the exam.
They serve no future purpose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if we want to build a second brain, how do we actually deprogram that academic trauma?
Well, it requires a really fundamental shift in how you view the life cycle of information itself. The academic approach assumes knowledge has an expiration date, which is the final exam.
Right.
But in the professional world, there is no syllabus. No one is going to tap you on the shoulder and tell you what piece of information will be highly valuable 3 years from now.
That is so true.
So in a professional context, notes must be viewed as compounding assets. They are knowledge building blocks.
Okay, I like that. Building
When
blocks.
you capture an idea now, you are not trying to memorize it. You are capturing your unique interpretation of that idea at this specific moment in time.
And you're basically banking it for your future self to deploy in some scenario you can't even predict yet.
Exactly. You're building an inventory of assets.
That reframing is really crucial. We aren't taking notes to remember, we're taking notes to build an inventory. So let's get into the actual architecture of how this is done.
Let's do it.
The material outlines this four-step framework under the acronym CODE, that's C-O-D-E, capture, organize, distill, and express.
Right.
Let's start at the very top of the funnel. Capture. Keep what resonates.
This first step is honestly where most modern knowledge workers fail before they even begin. We all suffer from extreme digital hoarding driven by FOMO, the fear of missing out.
Oh, guilty as charged.
We leave 50 browser tabs open, we bookmark hundreds of articles we know we will never actually read, we download white papers to folders we never open again.
Yeah, to build a functional second brain, you really must stop acting like a hoarder and start acting like a museum curator.
You have to step back from the raging river of content and make highly intentional, very selective decisions about what is actually granted entry into your collection.
I feel personally attacked by the 50 open browser tabs comment, by the way, but how do we actually curate? Like, what's the filter?
The sources provide 4 distinct criteria to act as a filter. And if a piece of information doesn't meet at least one of these 4, you just let it flow past you.
Okay, lay 'em on me.
The first criterion is it inspiring? We all have moments of deep professional or personal fatigue. So you capture the quotes, the client testimonials, the beautiful design examples that immediately shift your perspective and remind you why you do what you do.
I love that. The second criterion is it useful?
Right, and here, consider the mindset of a master carpenter working in a shop.
Okay.
When they cut a piece of premium oak, they don't just throw away the offcuts. They toss those random blocks and odd screws into a bin under the workbench,
Why?
because keeping them costs almost no physical space. And surprisingly often, a year later, that exact random offcut is precisely what is needed to shim a table leg or build a custom jig.
And information works exactly the same way. You capture the statistics, the mental models, the process workflows that might solve a random problem down the line.
Exactly.
Now, the third criterion is it personal? This is the data that no search engine can ever provide for you.
Things like text messages from your family, private journal reflections, your own hard-won lessons from a failed project at work.
The wisdom of your lived experience is incredibly valuable, but it is just as easily forgotten as a random newspaper article if you don't actively capture it.
Absolutely. And the fourth criterion, which I actually think is the most challenging, is surprising.
Oh, this is a big one.
It is the most vital filter for intellectual growth. Humans are biologically wired for confirmation bias. We get a massive hit of dopamine when we read an article that perfectly validates what we already believe.
We love being told we're right.
We do. But if a piece of information perfectly aligns with your existing worldview, it hasn't actually taught you anything new. So why waste the time saving it?
That's a huge point. You should be actively hunting for the data points, the counter-arguments, and the surprising anomalies that force you to actually reevaluate your assumptions.
Exactly. And even when you find that surprising article, there's a massive constraint you have to apply. The 10% rule.
Yes, the 10% rule. You should never, under any circumstances, save an entire article or a full book chapter into your second brain.
Never. You must extract only the absolute most salient nuggets, keeping it to roughly 10% of the original mass.
Because if you just clip the entire web page, you are literally just recreating the overwhelming noise of the internet inside your private workspace.
Right. If you save everything, you have effectively saved nothing. You've just moved the haystack from the internet onto your hard drive, and you still won't be able to find the needle.
Okay, but let's pause for a second and look at the reality of actually implementing this.
Sure.
If I'm sitting on my couch on a Sunday morning and I'm reading an incredible long-form article, and suddenly I have to stop, pull out my digital highlighter, cross-reference the paragraph against 4 separate criteria. Is it inspiring, useful, personal, surprising, and then carefully extract exactly 10%?
I see where you're going.
Doesn't that inject a massive amount of friction into the experience? I mean, doesn't curating a museum completely ruin the simple joy of just reading?
Well, if you approach it like an IRS tax audit, yes, it will totally ruin the joy of reading. That level of mechanical filtering is just unsustainable.
Okay, so what's the alternative?
The true golden rule of the cashier phase is to rely on the physiological feeling of resonance.
Resonance.
Yeah. The human brain is incredibly adept at subconscious pattern recognition. When you read a sentence and you feel that slight widening of your eyes or a quickening of your pulse or that internal aha moment, that is resonance.
Their intuitive hit.
Exactly. Your intuition is telling you there is value there, even if you can't logically articulate why it's valuable in that exact moment. Don't overanalyze it.
If it resonates, grab it quickly and just keep reading. The curation should happen at the speed of intuition.
Perfect way to put it.
So we trust that internal ping of resonance. I've captured these amazing excerpts, these brilliant building blocks, but now I have a new problem.
Where do they go?
Exactly. Which brings us to the O in code. Organize. Because I'll be completely honest with you here, my computer's document folder right now is an absolute graveyard of good intentions.
Most people's are.
I have these meticulously labeled folders for psychology, marketing, finance, leadership, and I just dump my captured notes in there, and they never, ever see the light of day again.
You have just perfectly described the exact failure point for basically 99% of digital note takers.
Well, at least I'm not alone.
You're definitely not. But you are organizing by broad academic subjects. It is the digital equivalent of using the Dewey Decimal System.
Right.
And this approach is a total trap because it assumes you are trying to build an encyclopedia. But you are a professional, not a librarian. You don't need a static encyclopedia. You need a dynamic production line.
So we have to completely abandon topical organization.
Yes. And we need to organize strictly by actionability.
Actionability, meaning instead of asking, what is this about, we ask, where will I use this next?
Precisely. Think about the heavy cognitive load of topical tagging.
Right.
If you save a really great article about the psychology of consumer pricing, does that go in the psychology folder, the marketing folder, or the finance folder?
Oh man, I would stare at the screen for 5 minutes trying to decide.
Exactly. Your brain has to burn precious energy making a complex taxonomic decision every single time you save a note. It creates massive friction.
But if you organize by actionability, the decision is basically binary and immediate. Which brings us to the PARA framework, PARA.
Projects, areas, resources, and archives.
Let's really pull this framework apart because it honestly seems like the engine of the entire system. P is for projects.
Right. These are short-term efforts with a clear deadline and a highly specific, measurable outcome.
Like launch the Q3 marketing campaign or buy a new car or write the quarterly board report. They have a distinct finish line.
Exactly. Then A is for areas. These are your long-term spheres of responsibility. They don't have an end date or a final outcome.
Instead, they have a standard that you have to maintain over time.
Yes. Think of things like personal health or household finances, or if you're a manager, team professional development. You never actually complete your health, right? It requires ongoing attention.
Right. Then R is for resources. This is basically your personal library of curiosities. Topics of future interest that aren't necessarily tied to an active project or a core responsibility right now.
Like maybe you are fascinated by mid-century modern architecture, or you're collecting recipes for sourdough bread, or saving articles about the future of artificial intelligence.
Stuff you just find interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And finally, A is for archives. This is the cold storage.
Right.
And it is arguably the most important folder of all four because it keeps the rest of the system incredibly clean.
So when a project is finished, you move it to archives.
Yep. When you change jobs, your areas from the old job go to archives. When you completely lose interest in that sourdough bread phase, it goes to archives.
The information isn't deleted, it is simply removed from your active visual field so it doesn't clutter up your daily workspace.
To make this hyper-tangible, let's use a visual analogy. Imagine your entire information diet is like the physical layout of a commercial kitchen.
Okay, I like this.
Your projects are the pots actively boiling on the stove right in front of you. You're constantly stirring them. You're adjusting the heat. They need your immediate, focused attention.
And your areas are the refrigerator. You open it multiple times a day to maintain the baseline operations of the kitchen.
Right. Your resources are the dry pantry down the hall. You only go in there when you specifically decide to bake a certain recipe and you need the flour.
And your archives. That is the deep freezer all the way down in the basement. It's full of great stock, but you really only go down there once every few months.
That is an excellent spatial mapping of cognitive load. By moving a note from the stove to the freezer, based entirely on when you need it, you ensure that when you sit down to work on a project, you are only looking at the exact ingredients required for that specific dish.
But I know there are listeners screaming at their speakers right now asking a very valid question. It's the 2020s. We have incredibly powerful global search functions on our computers. We have AI-driven semantic search. Why on earth do we need to bother dragging and dropping files into a four-folder PRA hierarchy?
It's a super common objection.
Right. Can't I just dump everything into one giant mega folder, maybe slap a few tags on the files and just rely on the search bar when I need something?
You can try, but it fundamentally misunderstands how human memory retrieves context. First off, tagging every single note requires immense discipline and mental energy at the exact moment of capture.
Which is exactly when you want the least friction possible.
Right. Second, relying entirely on search means you are banking on your future self remembering the exact keyword syntax you used 3 years ago.
Oh, that's a great point. What if you tagged a note revenue, but today you search for income? The search bar gives you 0 results.
Exactly. The search bar only works if you already know exactly what you were looking for. It doesn't help you discover things you completely forgot you even knew.
Wow, yeah. Doesn't allow for serendipity.
Furthermore, PRI isn't just about finding things, it's about creating dedicated, distraction-free environments.
Okay, say more about that.
Well, if you use a giant bucket folder, searching for a specific project document will simultaneously surface irrelevant personal notes, old tax returns, random recipes. It totally breaks your flow state.
Right, but when you open a PRA projects folder, it acts as a blinder. You only see the materials strictly necessary for the task at hand.
Exactly. And perhaps the most powerful aspect of PRA is its universality. It isn't restricted to a specific notes app.
Oh, right. You can mirror the exact same 4 folders, projects, areas, resources, archives, across your note-taking app, your computer's desktop file system, your Google Drive, even your email inbox.
The architecture of your entire digital life becomes uniform. There is 0 friction when switching contexts.
The universality is huge.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the friction of moving things around, though. What actually happens when a project fails or gets stalled indefinitely?
It happens all the time.
Like, say I'm working on launching a new website, and suddenly the budget gets pulled. The project is completely dead. Does it just sit on the stove burning forever?
No. And this is where the system actually requires some ruthlessness. If a project loses its momentum or its deadline entirely vanishes, it is no longer a project.
So you immediately downgrade it.
Yes. You either move the relevant notes into an area like marketing operations, or you dump it into resources for future inspiration, or you ship the entire folder straight down to the archives.
The stove must be kept clear for active cooking.
Exactly.
Okay, so the kitchen is beautifully organized, the ingredients are in the right places, but we run into another massive wall here.
Which is?
Let's say a few weeks pass. I sit down to actually work on a project. I open the folder, and I am staring at 20 different notes I captured. I click one open, and it is a massive wall of text.
Just a wall of words.
Like 3,000 words of an article I saved a month ago. I don't remember why I saved it. The sheer density of the text makes me want to slam my laptop shut and go watch television.
It's overwhelming.
It is. We have to make this information actually usable, which brings us to Distill.
Capturing and organizing are honestly entirely useless if the information cannot be rapidly digested at the exact moment of execution.
Right.
You have to adopt a radical empathy for your future self.
I love that phrase, radical empathy for your future self.
Yes. You must treat your future self not as some relaxed reader sitting on a porch with coffee, but as a deeply exhausted, highly impatient VIP executive.
Oh, that's such a good framing.
Because if you walk into a VIP's office and just hand them a dense, unformatted 30-page report, they will literally throw it in the trash. They do not have the time. They need the absolute essence of the idea delivered in seconds.
And to achieve that, the author introduces a methodology called progressive summarization.
Right.
We basically distill the notes in layers over time, completely separating the act of reading from the act of analyzing. Let me try an analogy here to make sure I'm really grasping the mechanics.
Go for it.
It feels very much like panning for gold. Layer 1 is the original raw excerpt you captured, the raw dirt and silt you just scoop straight out of the river.
Yes, the raw material. And it is vital that you don't try to analyze it the exact moment you capture it. Just let the dirt sit in the pan.
Okay. Then, maybe a week later, you revisit the note. This is layer 2. You read through the dirt and you simply bold the main points, the key phrases, the structural sentences. You are washing away the silt to reveal the larger pebbles.
Right. And you still aren't done. Later, perhaps when you are actively working on a related project, you return for layer 3.
And what happens in layer 3?
Now, you completely ignore all the unbolded text. You look only at the bolded pebbles, and you use a digital highlighter tool, like a bright yellow highlight, to mark the absolute best of the best sentences among the bolded text.
You are filtering the filter. You are isolating the actual gold flakes.
Precisely.
And there is a layer 4, though the source notes this is quite rare.
It is rare, yeah.
If a source is truly a cornerstone piece of knowledge, like a book that fundamentally changed your entire worldview, you execute layer 4. You write a brief executive summary in your own words using bullet points at the very top of the note.
You have officially smelted the flakes into a pure gold bar.
I love that.
The power of progressive summarization is that it leverages a really counterintuitive principle, the art of forgetting.
Wait, forgetting. We normally think of forgetting as a complete failure.
We do, but in knowledge management, purposeful forgetting is actually how we find clarity. The author uses this brilliant example of Pablo Picasso's famous series of bull sketches.
Oh, I've seen these.
Yeah, so Picasso started with a highly detailed, anatomically perfect, incredibly realistic charcoal drawing of a bull.
Right.
But over a series of subsequent sketches, he began aggressively removing details. He erased the shading, he simplified the musculature, he entirely removed the fur texture.
And in the final sketch, the bull is rendered with just a handful of continuous, elegant lines.
Yet that final minimalist sketch somehow captures the absolute essence of the bull, far better than the hyper-realistic original.
And we are doing the exact same thing to our reading material. We are pruning away the merely good sentences to allow the truly great concepts to actually breathe.
Exactly. Francis Ford Coppola utilized a remarkably similar analog process when he was preparing to direct The Godfather.
Really? How so?
He didn't just read the novel and then show up on set. He took a physical copy of Mario Puzo's book, cut it out page by page, and pasted it into a massive 3-ring binder.
Wow.
He went through with colored pens, highlighting specific dialogue, crossing out entire subplots, and writing extensive marginalia. He ruthlessly distilled a sprawling, pulpy novel down to its core thematic essence, family, power, betrayal.
Long before he ever called action on a single scene.
Exactly.
And here's where the digital medium offers a profound advantage over Coppola's physical binder, because when Coppola crossed out a subplot with a black marker, it was gone forever. But progressive summarization acts as a psychological safety net. When you highlight a sentence in digital text, you are not deleting the surrounding paragraphs. You are just building a visual map, a series of waypoints overlaid on top of the original document.
That is the absolute magic of it.
It's so freeing. If I am reading my layer 3 yellow highlights and suddenly a sentence feels totally out of context, I don't have to guess what the author meant. I just zoom back out. My eyes drop the highlight and read the layer 2 bolded text around it.
And if you're still confused, you just drop back to the layer 1 raw text.
Right.
The original context is always perfectly preserved underneath the distillation.
There is a beautiful biological concept mentioned in the literature that perfectly encapsulates this whole behavior, stigmergy.
Yes, stigmergy.
It is a mechanism of indirect coordination used by social insects, like ant colonies. When a single ant discovers a food source, it doesn't try to communicate the complex geographic coordinates back to the rest of the hive. Instead, it takes a piece of food and leaves a chemical pheromone trail on the physical environment as it walks back.
The environment itself actually stores the memory.
Yes. The next ant simply follows the strongest chemical trail. That absolutely blew my mind.
It's a perfect analogy.
When we do progressive summarization, we are essentially acting as the scout ant for our future selves. We are leaving highly concentrated digital pheromone trails, those bolds and highlights, right across our notes.
So when your future self comes along weeks later to do the actual work, they don't have to hack their way through the dense jungle of text all over again.
They just blindly follow the glowing yellow trail straight to the intellectual nourishment. We are making our future efforts effortless.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the final and really the most important phase of the code framework. E-Express. Show your work.
Because if you capture brilliantly, and you organize perfectly, and you distill ruthlessly, but you never actually produce anything, we haven't really built a second brain at all.
No, you've just built a highly optimized digital hoarding complex.
Right. The ultimate metric of success isn't how pristine your folder structure is. It is how effectively you can share your unique perspective with the world.
Absolutely.
And this touches on a really profound philosophical hurdle that prevents a lot of people from creating. It's a concept called Polanyi's paradox. Can we unpack this a bit? Because it really resonated with why I personally find writing so difficult.
Of course. Michael Polanyi was a philosopher who observed a fundamental bottleneck in human cognition. He said, "We know more than we can say."
We know more than we can say.
Right. Think about the physical act of riding a bicycle, or the intuition a seasoned marketing executive uses to kill a bad ad campaign, or a jazz musician improvising on stage.
They possess